Tay Robertson was finishing his school exams last year when he became really unwell.
I was just start coughing, basically until I puked, and then passed out. Just couldn't breathe at all. Not the most fun experience. Had an x-ray of my chest. Doctors said, go to Whangarei now, you've got cancer. Yeah.
They found a pretty massive tumour.
It crushed my left lung, shoved my heart over, collapsed my trachea a bit, so it meant I couldn't eat food at all. No visible signs because it was just right in my ribs, nowhere else.
Tay lives in Dargaville. That's over an hour away from Whangarei Hospital, and an even longer drive every time he has treatment at Starship in Auckland.
3 hours there, 3 hours back.
How much easier would have this been without all of that travel?
Way easier.
I guess it's just not something any child should be going through. It's far too big. But Tay's handled it really, really well. He's been great.
It scares you, doesn't it, mate?
Very much so.
And what are these trips like when you've got a sick kid in the car who's having really heavy treatment? What are they actually like?
Oh, they can be quite torturous. And normally it's at the middle of the night because he's developed a fever or something's gone wrong. And so, you're rushing over there, hoping he's going to get there before he throws up or before he gets worse.
And then you get this sort of stuff on top of it.
This is, this is something which you shouldn't have to be dealing with. To be honest, it's so far down on the list of your priorities which you're going through as a parent.
This is the National Travel Assistance Scheme for people who have to travel for treatment. They can claim mileage at 28 cents a kilometre and accommodation at $100 a night. It hasn't been updated since 2009 and does not come close to covering costs.
So that's 45 trips in total, 10,000k, and I think our expenditure on fuel is around the $4,000 mark.
And how much have you got back?
$900 to date.
So it's cost you $4,000 of gas, and you got
$900 back, yeah.
Holy heck. And you have to stay in Auckland as well?
We do, because Tay is a child still. We were still under 18 at the time, so at Ronald McDonald House at Starship for all his treatment.
And if it wasn't for Ronald McDonald House, what would you have done?
I don't know what we would have done, to be honest. Probably have to mortgage the house.
The form, it's pretty outdated.
So you've got to take it up to the reception and ask them to date it and say whether it's a return trip or you're arriving or going back, and they've got to stamp it. And if you don't get it done, you don't get paid for it. And believe it or not, you still have to send this by post.
Really?
Yep. So of the two letters I've posted in the last year, both of them have been for this.
It's almost like they don't want people to claim the money.
I would say that's very much the case.
What would you say to the Ministry of Health? What would you say to them if you could?
Oh, look, you just got to bring it into the century. You just got to get with the program. You shouldn't have to be stressing about, can I get enough petrol to go to Auckland to do the treatment? That's just should be the very last thing you should be thinking about. It should be, I've got to go. And you should be able to just go and do it. Postcode cancer sucks. It really does.
Oh, I found the eye. And it was a
I feel like it's a kick in the guts sometimes.
Daddy.
It's not fair on people who have to go through that process, let alone try and fill out the forms and wait a month for reimbursement and get so little from it.
Richard Blair's 4-year-old daughter Addison has leukemia.
Can I push that one in?
They live in Waiuku on the outskirts of Auckland, about 70 kilometres away from Starship Hospital, close enough that they don't qualify for accommodation. And how long does it take to get in there?
On a clean run, we're about an hour 10 with no traffic, and then anywhere up to 3 hours.
Wow.
We would have to travel up 3 days a week. after potential, some days 4 doses of chemotherapy, and so she's vomiting up all the way home. I'm having to hand over sick buckets and a little 4-year-old girl holding her own sick bucket, and just trying to keep her comfortable for the journey home.
That must have been hell.
It was a form of hell, yes. You're travelling in, you're tired. The last thing you're thinking of is filling out a form when you're having to carry your daughter out of the hospital each day because she's too sick to walk.
How much do you get a kilometre?
We get 28 cents a kilometre, which for me works out to be $17.50 per trip in.
And how far does that get you?
It gets me about a third of the way. It's not sustainable for families. They're going through the worst journey of their life. You could never imagine it. It can break you.
I had 3 doctors telling me that, this was as good as it was going to get, and we needed to prepare for the worst, and where does he want to die, basically, at home or in hospital.
Had you not gone private and you'd waited for the public system, would you still be here?
No, I wouldn't be. It's very unlikely that I'd still be hanging around.
Hamish and Jana McPherson were living the Kiwi dream, raising their young family in Queenstown.
Good life.
Yeah, it was a good life. Well, it is a good life, and that's what I'd kind of like to go back to.
The good life changed in March last year after Hamish noticed a lump on his neck. Jana insisted he get it checked out.
Got a needle put in there, sucked it out. That wasn't unpleasant. Doctor called me back to say that you've got a melanoma.
But it could be successfully removed, and Hamish embraced life with new vigour. Then in January, he started to feel off. He was tired, lethargic. A scan and routine follow-up revealed devastating results. But the way they were delivered was brutal.
There was no phone call, nothing. They just sent me a letter. And so for the first time ever, I Googled what it meant, because I knew this was quite heavy and quite important. And that's when they told me basically you've spread all 3 organs. That was a bit hard to take when you're at home with your daughter, 6-year-old daughter.
Cancer was now in his brain, lungs, stomach and liver, and it was inoperable. The McPhersons were devastated, but the public health system then delivered another blow.
They got me down to Dunedin for a 5-minute consult to say, it's spread everywhere and we can't really do anything for you, you'll have to go to another department.
But the next available appointment with his new specialist in the public system was 8 weeks away. Hamish didn't have the luxury of time, so without health insurance he went private, paying for an oncologist, the scans and his unfunded medication himself. It was life-saving but very expensive.
The first payment was a phone call to my parents, which was pretty hard. And they extended their overdraft or did whatever they needed to. They had to dig deep to make that happen.
The immunotherapy alone is $55,000 a pop, and this medication, which Hamish dubs the magic pills, is $5,500 a month.
I was in hospital for 10 days. I was on the way out and then started taking these. 10 days later I left. That's a miracle working type potion.
Then another miracle, the kindness of loved ones and even strangers.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight. You all look fabulous and ready to party.
On a cold winter's night, this community has gathered for a fundraiser to pay for Hamish's treatment.
12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
The generosity and support has been overwhelming and humbling for the
Probably what you both really wanted to say is thank you.
Could you afford, just you two on your own, could
No
you
way.
have afforded this?
No, we said we couldn't straight away. A lot of the doctors and things that we talked to, they said most people don't just have, $150,000 just sitting there waiting for a rainy day.
But is it right that this family has to rely on raising money to stay alive? Is our public health system failing sick Kiwis?
I just think it's broken, it's devastated, it's a war zone.
We've seen people pass away, and it just shouldn't be from monetary. Shouldn't be for monetary reasons.
I guess the ultimate question is, can you afford to have cancer in New Zealand?
I don't think many people can afford to have cancer in New Zealand.
What do you want to say to cancer?
Piss off. That's a wrap.
Let's start with outcomes. Survival. Aussie wins. This study shows that each year there are 1,061 people in New Zealand killed by cancer who would have survived if they lived in Australia. 1,061. And to our shame, the large majority, 780 of those, are women. Australia is beating us. Why? Well, Aussie canes us when it comes to funding drugs. They are faster. When there's a new medicine, it takes New Zealand almost a year longer than Aussie to give it the tick and fund it. A year. And they fund more drugs too. Look at this. Last decade, these countries registered a total of 441 brand new and exciting drugs. Australia funded 120 of them. How many did we fund? 34. We are miles behind, and of course, a lot of the drugs that we didn't fund are cancer drugs. Basically, if you need cancer drugs, you are better off across the ditch. Aussie also has a way better game plan. Pharmac's budget is pretty much fixed. For a new medicine to be funded, they need to hope that the government increases its budget enough to fit it in, or they just have to spend less on other drugs. That is not how diseases work. If more people are getting bowel cancer, that doesn't mean that less people are getting diabetes. Aussie is nimble though. Its drug funding budget is flexible. If a medicine saves lives and money spent on hospital care, the budget will be increased to fund it. And in Aussie, they catch cancer earlier. Both countries fund cervical cancer screening from 25 years old, but breast cancer screening is available 5 years earlier in Australia. You can get it free there when you are 40. And bowel cancer screening, this is crucial, is available 10 years earlier over there at age 50. Honestly, how many lives is this costing us? We probably do not want to know the score on this one, to be honest. And finally, travel and accommodation reimbursement. Both countries are stingy as, both leaving struggling people out of pocket. If we could change this one thing in New Zealand, we could nab one small win over Aussie. Because at the moment, this is creating medical refugees who flee New Zealand to get proper cancer treatment. Emma Cropper is Newshub's Australia correspondent, and Emma, you've met one of these refugees.
Yeah, Paddy, I met Anna, and she was a really, really cool mum from Gisborne, and she had watched two of her really close family members pass away from melanoma. Her father had fought the disease, and that's why when she was diagnosed, Paddy, she knew she was going to have to fight the New Zealand health system if she wanted to survive. These coastal beaches are what attract so many Kiwis to this side of the Tasman, but we're heading about 90 minutes south of Sydney to meet one woman who moved her entire family closer to the beach to save her life. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
Hello.
So how are the kids settling into school?
Yeah, really good. They've settled in really well.
Were you worried about that?
Probably for Amani, a new high school and making new friends is kind of tough when you're 14.
Anna's family left their home in New Zealand this year. It's nice to live close to the beach.
Yeah, we're so lucky.
For a better lifestyle and a chance to beat cancer. You moved over here to save your life.
Yeah, I didn't have any other option. I just had to do it for the kids and to live.
3 years ago, Anna was diagnosed with melanoma. The family were living in Perth at the time.
Yeah, I was sort of just shocked, really, I suppose. And they took that side of my neck and my nodes, my lymph nodes, and then they had said that was clear, and then my follow-up would just be 6 monthly scans.
Anna and her family moved home to Gisborne. It was 2020, the country was dealing with COVID, and those scans weren't happening.
Got all of my paperwork sent to the hospital and they discussed my case, and they just said not for scans or follow-up, that I would just go back to the GP for skin checks.
Anna's family encouraged her to pay for private health care.
So I drove to Tauranga 3.5 hours and paid the $400 to see the oncologist, and he thought that I should be having scans, and through those scans we picked up that it had spread to both my lungs.
So it's just by chance, really, chance in you fighting for it.
Yeah.
You picked up the cancer had come back.
Yeah, so I didn't feel unwell, I didn't feel sick, I didn't look sick, so I would never have known that I had the disease in both lungs if I hadn't been having those scans.
Did you feel let down by the health system back there at that point?
Yeah, I did. I felt really let down, and I felt like I really had to push. I had to push to go and see a private oncologist. I had to push to try and get scans.
From there, she was given one publicly funded option.
So I was seen at the hospital, and they told me that there was one drug that I would be put on, Keytruda. That's the funded drug in New Zealand, and you get 4 doses, have a scan, and if it hadn't worked, then that was it really.
With only one option in New Zealand, she decided to see what was available overseas. After a few calls, she found a treatment clinic in Sydney and moved back to Australia the following week.
So how often would you come up to Sydney for this treatment?
Every 3 weeks.
Her lifeline has come from the Melanoma Institute Australia. They didn't offer a miracle cure, but a clinical trial.
1 hour treatment, feeling good.
Anna is alone the entire time. COVID restrictions mean no support person can come in with her.
Hello, how are you going?
Good.
But she takes our call while getting medicine she couldn't get in New Zealand.
What's it like sitting there being hooked up to that treatment you're getting?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a reality check whenever I'm here. Just, kind of see and thinking, what am I doing? But yeah, it's okay. I've kind of got used to it.
It's working, is it?
Yeah, it is working. So there's no more tumours in my lungs, which is amazing. Yeah.
Are you ever wondering what it would have been like had you not come over to Australia, had you had to stay in New Zealand?
Yeah, that does cross my mind. I kind of wonder what my story would have been like, for sure.
I'm here to talk about Justin and Rich, both of these dads that I've spoken to with their kids who are travelling. They just want to change the NTA for other dads and other families so that they don't get broken while they're dealing with cancer.
It's great that they're speaking to you, and that gives us an opportunity to really hear those stories and to understand. And we appreciate they've taken the time to do that.
Yeah, so the National Travel Assistance Fund, the NTA, is it out of date and does it need to be fixed?
I really want to acknowledge that the system we've got at the moment is a legacy system. It's inadequate. Our opportunity that we've got is to make it better. So yes, it has to change.
The mileage rate, will it go up from 28 cents?
In short, I imagine it will, as we look at all of our options.
$100 a night for accommodation. That doesn't seem to be enough. Will that go up as well?
In many circumstances, Central Auckland likely to go up. Different people travel to different places, and we need to make sure that what we're paying reflects what it's going to cost. And how are we doing that? Are we actually paying directly rather than paying the individual through a reimbursement model? There's all sorts of things that we can look at, things like petrol vouchers. And some of those things will take out all of the time lags for people around getting money back.
The other issue that's been raised is that the forms are really hard to fill out and you've got to post them. And, it's 2023.
Yeah. So we are looking at whether we can make that something that people can access from home and start to post things electronically.
What's the timeline? When will people be able to...
So for the next several months, we're doing the work that's needed to be done so that we can look at rolling out a new program in 2024.
So as soon as next year, people could have better support from the NTA.
That's what we would like to do, and it's really important to people. Sorting out the postcode lottery, making sure that no matter who you are and where you live, you can get the treatment that you need.